But by doing this, how can we claim to be better than the people we wish to drag into the light? We cannot make that claim. You and humanity can claim the light that is left after our passing, but I can claim only that I know my nature. And even in the myths of the past, angels were not created for kindness. The Warhammer 40k universe is steeped in grim darkness, a far-future dystopia where humanity clings to survival amidst constant war and the ever-present threat of chaos. At the heart of this conflict lies the Imperium of Man, a vast authoritarian empire forged in the fires of the Great Crusade. Led by a seemingly benevolent emperor, the Great Crusade aimed to reunite a fractured humanity and bring enlightenment to the galaxy. However, beneath the gilded facade of progress and unity, a chilling undercurrent of ruthlessness, intolerance, and oppression flowed. This raises the crucial question: was the Imperium in the pursuit of order, as morally bankrupt as the forces of chaos it opposed? To answer this, we must delve into the complex details of the Imperium's actions during the Great Crusade and compare them to the insidious influence of chaos. Greetings all, I'm your guide, the Archivist. Today I will dive into if the Imperium's campaigns were as devastating as the forces of chaos. Before we begin, please make sure to like the like and subscribe waypoints down below, so that more people can learn from the archives. The narrative often paints chaos as the ultimate evil, a realm of demons, corruption, and unbridled hedonism. The Chaos Gods, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh, embody the most destructive aspects of the human psyche, feeding on violence, despair, ambition, and excess. Their followers, twisted by dark pacts and the promise of power, revel in suffering and seek to tear down the very fabric of reality. Yet to dismiss the Imperium as simply the lesser evil is to ignore the deeply unsettling aspects of its own ideology and practices. The Emperor's vision for humanity was one of unity and progress, achieved through absolute control and unwavering obedience. The Great Crusade, while ostensibly a campaign for reunification, was in reality a brutal war of conquest. Worlds that resisted imperial compliance were met with overwhelming force. Populations were subjugated, their cultures suppressed, and their beliefs eradicated. The Imperium tolerated no deviation from the imperial truth, a secular ideology that ironically demanded religious-like devotion. One of the most glaring examples of the Imperium's ruthlessness was its policy of extermination. Any world deemed too corrupted by alien influence, too resistant to imperial rule, or simply too inconvenient to integrate was subjected to exterminatus, the complete annihilation of all life. This horrific practice, justified as a necessary evil to safeguard humanity, highlights the Imperium's willingness to sacrifice entire populations for the perceived greater good. Were these decisions any less horrific than the predations of chaos? While chaos revels in destruction for its own sake, the Imperium coldly calculated the cost-benefit ratio of genocide. The end result, however, remained the same: the complete and utter destruction of sentient life. Furthermore, the Imperium's rigid social hierarchy and brutal enforcement of its laws fostered an environment of fear and oppression. The Adeptus Terra, the vast bureaucracy that governed the Imperium, was riddled with corruption and inefficiency. Justice was often swift and merciless, with little regard for due process. Deviation from the norm, even in thought, was punishable by harsh penalties, including servitude, re-education, or even death. This created a climate of paranoia and suspicion, where citizens were encouraged to inform on one another in the name of loyalty to the Emperor. Consider the fate of psykers within the Imperium. These individuals possessing innate psychic abilities were both a vital asset and a dangerous threat. While some were trained and sanctioned to serve as astropaths or sanctioned psykers, many were deemed too unstable or uncontrollable. These unfortunate souls were sacrificed to the Golden Throne, a life-sustaining device for the Emperor, their psychic energies fueling his immense power. This constant drain of human life, while arguably necessary for the Imperium's survival, raises profound ethical questions. Was this truly a benevolent act of leadership, or a utilitarian calculus that valued the survival of the Imperium over the lives of its citizens? The Emperor himself remains a figure of intense debate. While he sought to guide humanity towards a brighter future, his methods were often questionable. He deliberately suppressed religious belief while simultaneously demanding absolute loyalty to himself. He manipulated his sons, the Primarchs, engineered for specific purposes, and often kept them in the dark about his true plans. He refused to acknowledge the existence of chaos, despite his deep understanding of it, ultimately leading to the Horus Heresy, the galaxy-wide civil war that nearly destroyed the Imperium. The Emperor's ambition could be argued as a parallel of the ambitions of chaos. Tzeentch sought to control fate and destiny, and the Emperor sought to control humanity's destiny. While their motivations were different, the desire for control and the potential for corruption remained. This is a crucial detail when analysing the true moral standing of the Imperium. In contrast, chaos offers its followers power in exchange for their souls, but it also offers freedom, albeit in a twisted and destructive form. The followers of chaos are free to indulge in their desires, to express their rage, their ambition, or their hedonistic impulses without restraint. While this freedom leads to unimaginable horror, it is undeniably a powerful allure for those who feel oppressed by the Imperium's rigid control. It's also important to remember that the Great Crusade encountered many cultures and societies that were not inherently evil or chaotic. Some were simply different, with unique customs, beliefs, and a way of life. Yet the Imperium often treated these cultures with disdain, viewing them as inferior or in need of correction. Worlds that refused to abandon their traditions and embrace the imperial creed were often conquered or forcibly assimilated, their cultures erased and their people enslaved. This cultural imperialism, driven by the Imperium's unwavering belief in its own superiority, is another dark stain on its legacy. Ultimately, the question of whether the Imperium was as bad as chaos during the Great Crusade is not easily answered. Chaos undeniably represents the ultimate form of corruption and destruction, driven by malevolent entities that revel in suffering. However, the Imperium, in pursuit of order and unity, committed acts of extreme violence, oppression, and cultural destruction that cannot be ignored. The Imperium's actions, while justified by the need to protect humanity, were often morally reprehensible. Its rigid ideology, its brutal enforcement of laws, and its willingness to sacrifice entire populations for the greater good created a society that was arguably just as oppressive and dehumanizing as the forces of chaos it opposed. The details of its policies and actions speak volumes about the true nature of the Imperium, exposing the dark undercurrents beneath its veneer of righteousness. Furthermore, the very structure of the Imperium made it vulnerable to chaos. The paranoia and fear fostered by the regime, and the concentration of power in the hands of a few. The concentration of power in the hands of the few, and the suppression of dissenting voices all created fertile ground for corruption and infiltration. The Horus Heresy, the cataclysmic event that plunged the Imperium into darkness, was a direct result of these weaknesses, demonstrating that the Imperium's own methods ultimately paved the way for its near destruction. In conclusion, while the Imperium and Chaos represent opposing forces in the Warhammer 40k verse, they share a disturbing number of similarities. Both are driven by a desire for control, both are willing to commit acts of unimaginable cruelty, and both ultimately lead to suffering and destruction. The Imperium, in the pursuit of order, became a reflection of the very darkness it sought to eradicate. It is a stark reminder that even the noblest of intentions can pave the road to hell, and that the line between order and tyranny can be disturbingly thin. The comparison is not about absolving chaos of its inherent evil, but about acknowledging the uncomfortable truth within the Imperium, in its desperate struggle for survival, often mirrored in the very darkness it sought to defeat, blurring the lines between savior and oppressor in the grim darkness of the far future. The details paint a nuanced picture, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable reality of the Imperium, despite its lofty goals, was far from a moral paragon. and so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the like and subscribe waypoints down below. In the grim dark of the far future, there is only war.